challenges tend to loom larger when entrusted to the inexperienced. For a nation like South Africa, where once the lights never dimmed, Eskom stood as a colossal symbol of power. It was the star of the show. It electrified homes, fueled industries, and powered dreams. But today, it finds itself cast as the antagonist in a power struggle, plunging the nation into darkness. According to available data, South Africa is currently grappling with an electricity crisis in 2023 that surpasses even the dire cuts witnessed in 2022. Last year, the country endured over 200 days of power cuts, making it the worst year for power failures in its history. The current situation has escalated to an alarming extent, with South Africans enduring stage 6 power cuts, resulting in daily blackouts lasting between 6 to 8 hours. This widespread crisis affects the majority of its over 59 million people. How did this magnificently profitable and largely sensible system all go horribly wrong? How did Eskom, the big shot on the global power stage, end up taking the electrifying nosedive and leaving South Africa in a precarious blackout? Welcome to our in-depth explanation of the rise and fall of Eskom, a story with profound implications for a nation's future. As we delve into the intricate web of challenges and consequences, we invite you to stay with us in this critical journey. For stories that matter, for insights that shape the world, we encourage you to subscribe and be a part of this important conversation. Join us in our quest for knowledge and understanding. South Africa is currently being gripped by a devastating energy crisis, with homes and businesses suffering blackouts for up to 12 hours a day. The failure of the country's national utility company, Eskom, to meet electricity demand has been going on since 2007 and is now in its worst period. Many reasons have been suggested as to how this predicament arose. Prominent among them being the widespread corruption connected to the ruling African National Congress's system of patronage. There are few things more dangerous than a mixture of power, arrogance, and incompetence. This system of patronage is slowly eating up South Africa. Going back to history, electricity was first produced in South Africa during the 1880s, when the city of Kimberley installed 16 electric streetlights, 4 of them outside the city hall, thus becoming the first center in the southern hemisphere to have electric streetlights. Small power stations were also built in the late 1890s to supply the gold mines in the Witwatersrand. By 1915, 4 thermal power plants were built to meet the growing demand for electricity of these mines and their towns. From these gold mines, South Africa was producing more than half of the global demand for gold, and with this came a great demand for electricity to power these mining activities. By the 1920s, there was a massive migration from rural areas to towns, and there was also rapid growth in manufacturing, which resulted in even higher demand for electricity. All this development required a consolidated electricity industry. So, in 1922, the Electricity Act was passed by the Parliament of the Union of South Africa. This act sought to, among other things, bring together various electricity generating companies, most of which had their roots deeply entwined with the mining industry on the hallowed grounds of the Rand. On the 1st of March 1923, Eskom came into being. It emerged from the original name, the Electricity Supply Commission, or as it was known in the eloquent language of Afrikaans, Eskom. Dr. Hendrik van der Bijl became the inaugural chairperson of the board. Van der Bijl was a man whose contribution extended far beyond Eskom. He was not merely a board member, but a renowned South African scientist and industrialist. So influential was he that a town bears his name. In 1925, Eskom erected a temporary power station while a bigger hydro station was being built at the Sabi River Gorge, which eventually became operational halfway through 1927. These 2 power stations were the first to be built and used by Eskom. Despite a worldwide economic depression in 1929, Eskom still enjoyed strong demand with sales of 800 million units that year. In response to the increased demand, 2 additional sets of 20 megawatts were commissioned at Witbank Power Station, bringing its total capacity to 100 megawatts. Witbank was now the largest power station in the country, producing the cheapest electricity in the world. Eskom's construction of Duronput Dam in the Great Oliphant River meant Witbank now enjoyed abundant water and electricity supply, allowing for the development of the coal mining industry in the surrounding area. Eskom also designed and installed a street lighting system for the town that became an international showpiece. In 1932, South African mining received a major boost when the discovery of gold fields near Randfontein coincided with a steep rise in the gold price. It became clear that Eskom would have to build new power stations to satisfy the increasing demand of the gold mines. But first, there were 2 major obstacles to be overcome. The VFP had a virtual monopoly of electricity supply to the gold mines, and there was also a serious shortage of water near the Rand. In 1948, Eskom took over VFP, a further step towards establishing a national supply system. By the end of the 90s, Eskom was supplying more than half the electricity in Africa and ranked amongst the largest utilities in the world. In late 1990, the ANC-led government massively accelerated township electrification, providing people with the crucial ability to improve their lives and to participate in modernity. However, the popularization of electricity also had the consequences of making it subject to political forces. A regulator was established, and for years it recommended below inflation price increases, with 1 year out to the political consequences of doing otherwise. At the same time, Eskom was still considered a hero, and it was no surprise then that in 2001, Eskom was named the Financial Times Power Company of the Year at the Global Energy Awards ceremony in New York. It was described as providing the world's lowest cost electricity, while at the same time making superior technological innovations, increasing transmission system reliability, and developing economic, efficient, and safe methods for combustion of low-grade coal. As far back as December 1998, analysts and leaders in Eskom and the South African government predicted that Eskom would run out of electricity power reserves by 2007 unless action was taken to prevent it. To improve power supply and reliability, a 1998 white paper report recommended restructuring Eskom into separate electricity generation and power transmission businesses. Despite the warnings of the 1998 report and requests by Eskom to be allowed to increase capacity, the national government took no action. At the same time, the Mbeki government was considering the privatization of Eskom, which was cited as a reason why the government took no action. This resulted in Eskom being unable to add additional generating capacity and thereby being unable to keep up with the increasing national demand for electricity from 2002 onward. It wasn't until 2004 that the government started acknowledging that the electricity supply was insufficient for the growing economy, prompting the Department of Minerals and Energy to invite proposals on how to increase production by at least 1,000 megawatts annually from the year 2007. The private sector was hesitant in responding to the request, raising, amongst other concerns, Eskom's intention to retain at least 70% of the generation and therefore dominate the market. Between 1961 and 1996, 15 power stations were commissioned, adding a combined 35,804 megawatts of capacity. In the 21st century, only 9,564 megawatts of capacity has been added from Medupi and Kusile power stations. Many Eskom power stations are almost 50 years old and nearing decommissioning, following the first period of load shedding in 2007 to 2008. Eskom commissioned the construction of the Medupi and Kusile coal-fired power plants to expand energy production by 25%. The construction of these plants encountered numerous technical problems and cost overruns, whilst the existing fleet of power plants was not replaced and continued to operate past their operational lifespan. Sabotage and corruption at Eskom and its suppliers have also prolonged and deepened the energy crisis by limiting the country's ability to maintain existing power generating capacity while increasing expenses. Forensic investigations have found evidence that, for example, damage to a coal conveyor at Lethabo was the result of deliberate sabotage, where steel supports had been severed, causing a power supply pylon to collapse. Yet, despite investigations and disciplinary action, acts of sabotage continue, with multiple incidences being reported to have occurred in several plants. In December 2022, it was announced that the South African National Defence Force would be deployed at 4 Eskom power stations for an indeterminate length of time in response to the growing threat of sabotage, theft, vandalism, and corruption. In late February 2023, the then Eskom CEO controversially stated that 4 criminal syndicates had established themselves within the national utility and that an unnamed senior ANC MP was involved, and that the government lacked the political will to resolve the situation. The CEO also stated that, in his opinion, load shedding is to a large extent attributable to crime and corruption. Eskom is saddled with a massive debt burden, forcing it to tread a thin line between allocating capital for regular maintenance and capital expenditure of its fleet of aging coal-fired power plants, often at the cost of daily power cuts. The main culprits of these owed debts are South African municipalities, who owe Eskom more than $3 billion. Eskom supplies power to 238 municipalities, with the top 20 of them accounting for 77% of the total overdue debt. Not addressing the decade-old problem of municipalities not paying their bills when it first started is costing it billions, and there seems to be no viable solutions on the cards. The energy crisis has wrought severe and far-reaching consequences upon South Africa. These repercussions encompass the curtailment of economic growth and the exacerbation of business challenge across the country, alongside an alarming surge in crime rates and a pronounced influence on South African politics. For instance, in healthcare, it is estimated that approximately 80% of public healthcare facilities grappled with the repercussions of these persistent blackouts, with only a meager 20% being spared from the impact of these power cuts. This dire situation has seriously compromised patient care, particularly in rural regions, and has even overwhelmed major hospitals as patients from affected rural areas flood in. Surgical care has been particularly hampered by the long waiting lists. It has also been reported that extended periods of load shedding has triggered a spike in criminal activities. This includes the audacious theft of equipment from power stations, substations, and transmission lines during power outages by metal thieves, further complicating Eskom's efforts to alleviate the energy crisis. Public protests have erupted in response to the frequency and extent of load shedding, particularly in places like Durban community of Phoenix and the Johannesburg's community of Boksburg. For Eskom to get out of this mess, several proposals have been put on the table, among them a transition to green and renewable energy. This will be through the Just Energy Transition Project, which is a $500 million project approved by the World Bank in November 2022 at the request of the government of South Africa. It seeks to support Eskom to decommission the 56-year-old Komati coal-fired power plant, repurpose the project area with renewable energy and batteries, and create opportunities for workers and communities. If successful, the project could provide a blueprint for a just energy transition in South Africa and beyond. The second proposal is the implementation of the long-promised but failed to implement market-oriented reforms laid out in the 1998 White Paper on Energy Policy. This includes opening the grid to private producers, ending Eskom's monopoly, and reducing political control over power procurement. Although electricity access is high compared to regional averages, about 10% of South Africans still lack access to electricity and 47% are considered energy poor. Investing in reform that provides reliable electricity services and universal electricity access is urgently needed. Lastly, and perhaps most crucially, Eskom has been a fertile breeding ground for patronage, extensive corruption, and political maneuvering over the past 2 decades. To truly realize the tangible benefits that could stem from the proposed reforms, there must be a genuine desire and unwavering commitment to root out the pervasive political misconduct that appears to have infiltrated every facet of South African society. Without these commitments, Eskom may well remain a relic of its former self.